He actually just died.
I know there's no names. I don't think
Yeah.
so when he comes up, he's going to say, you guys will okay with the names. Friends, before we start the formal service in David's memory, each of his immediate family members has a black ribbon which we've pinned to their clothing. When the ribbon is torn, it symbolizes the torn heart that you all have inside. Before we tear the ribbons, I'll recite a blessing with you, and the blessing thanks God for David's life, despite the sadness we feel today at his death. So if you'd like to repeat the blessing after me, we'll do it in Hebrew first, and then in English. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam dayan ha'emet. And the English. Blessed art thou, Lord our God, ruler of the universe, creator of life, and true judge. And we all say together, Amen. Children are the only ones who wear it on the left side. The rest of us don't. Okay. That's fine. Hi, Rabbi Rosenblum. That's a handshake. Did you want to speak at the end during the service? All right. So after the kids and Dory speak, I'll ask you.
Yeah, I would say on the night when you come up, or if you just everyone's trying to close, they would just use with the ramp just on the other side of the wall, and there is closets behind us. Ladies and gentlemen, as we begin our services here today, we would kindly ask if everyone would please turn off or silence all electronic devices. Thank you.
Friends, a moment ago we all witnessed the tearing of the ribbons that each of David's family members has pinned to their clothing. The ribbon which symbolizes the torn heart which they have within, but which affirms their faith in God and in the goodness of life, even as we mourn David today. We're going to begin this service with a selection from the book of Psalms. Psalm 121 is a prayer in which we ask God to guard our souls in our going out and in our coming in. I'm going to begin with a few of the original Hebrew verses, and then I'll read a version of the psalm in English. Shir Lamalot, Esahenai Eleharim, Me'ayin Yavo Ezri, Ezri Mehim Adonai, Oseh Shamayim V'Haaretz, Al Yitei Lamot Raglecha, Al Yanum Shomrecha, Hine Lo Yanum V'Lo Yishan, Shomer Yisrael. I will lift my eyes up to the mountains. Where will my help come from? My help comes from the Lord, creator of heaven and earth. God will not suffer your foot to move. Your guardian will not slumber. Behold, the guardian of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. The Lord will protect you. The Lord will shelter you. The Lord will see that the sun will not smite you by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord will keep you from all evil and preserve your soul. The Lord will guard your going out and your coming in from this time forth and forever. The 23rd Psalm expresses our conviction that even when we walk through the valley of the shadow of death, we are never alone, that God is always with us and gives us support, strength, and courage equal to our needs. If you are familiar with the 23rd Psalm, I invite you to join me as we recite it. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest the table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. It is a special blessing when family and friends are able to express their love, admiration, and longing for a loved one who has passed away at a funeral service. And so this afternoon, there are a number of speakers who are going to share their thoughts with us. First, David's brother Michael is going to come up and speak. After that, David's wife Tori and their children Nathan and Noah will be coming up. And then finally, Father Brian Burgess will offer his special thoughts about David. So with that, Michael, would you like to come up and begin?
It's not a novel, I promise. That's not meaning of that. Off the cuff, I was thinking about on the ride here, the irony that we're here on Halloween, right? So we're in a chapel on Halloween. That's kind of interesting. But I was thinking to myself, man, Halloween was the most awesome day for us. We would go up and down the streets of Millbrook, eat a pot of spaghetti for energy, go back out again. And then for my Willingboro friends here, we thought, as naive as we were, the good candy was in country club. So we'd go over to country club. That's right, country club represents. And so we'd go over there and we would go trick-or-treating. And you know, back then, I don't know, my parents didn't care where we were. It didn't matter. The only rule was we were not allowed to open the candy until they inspected it first, right? So, and of course we didn't do that either. So, by the way, if you're not from Bishop Eustace, raise your hand. What an awesome city, all you guys in that, so thank you. And I was going to ask you to sing your alma mater, but that won't be. So, I am David's brother by 18 months. We are close in age. We grew up together as best friends. We had many of the same interests, and then we were different in so many ways. David, quiet, reserved. Me, loud, vocal. My wife might say obnoxious, but we were definitely opposites, as you can imagine. But we were the yin and yang. We just gelled. Our friendship was similar to actually Nathan and Noah's. Very close in age, very supportive. We just went through life thinking that this is the way it was. We came home, we played baseball, football, did homework, went to bed, and got back up again. David was a kind, gentle soul. He could be naive at the same time, but as we all know, there just wasn't a bad bone in his body. I will tell you though, unfortunately I was an accomplice to a criminal, and that criminal was my mother over there. My brother's favorite food was lasagna. Couldn't get enough of lasagna. Lasagna, I mean, we even called him Garfield at one point because that's all he would eat. So, my mother, who couldn't cook very well to begin with, but my dad didn't really cook. But my mother was, Jewish mom. You want a brisket? Sure. Matzo ball soup? Yeah. Make reservations at a restaurant? Sure. Jewish mom could do that. But lasagna? So Stouffer's lasagna was bought every week and then taken out of the lasagna as the box and cooked. And David was told that my mother made it hand-baked. And I was forced to sit there and lie about the whole thing. This went on for a good 3 or 4 years. Honestly, I think David probably figured it out, but being David, he just didn't want to hurt my mom's feelings. But, we never had Italian food like that before. So. Through the years, as I alluded to earlier, we did so much together. We were the typical latchkey kids, as both parents worked. We walked back and forth to school together, to Country Club Elementary School. And then, on some occasions when a ride could not be had, we'd walk back and forth to Memorial Junior High School. And again, for my Willenboro friends here, what was up with that walk? You Country Club people got to a bus, and we in Millbrook had to walk to Memorial Junior High School. And guys, I am telling you, it was like at least a 4-mile walk each way. I am not lying. But then again, we were on the wrong side of the railroad tracks. On most days, it was playing outside from sunrise to sundown, baseball, football, basketball. We played hard. We made up games like home run derby. We played street touch football that turned into tackle football, that turned into bruises. Sometimes it turned into crying. But it was a good time, and we never went in until the flickering of the lights on the porch, right? That's when it was time to come in. And even then, we would just do the whole 10 more minutes thing. David was much better at sports than me, I'll admit it. Didn't want to admit it back then, but I admit it. He excelled in organized sports. He came close to bowling many of the time, 300 games. That was his thing. His 289s that he hit, and as a lefty. But the one thing that always struck in my mind was being in baseball. There was a thing called Major League, Minor Leagues, and Farms. I was 12 years old. He was 10, going on 11. And after tryouts were done, I was in the minor leagues and he was in the major leagues. Doesn't it bother you that your brother's in the major leagues? No, it's my brother. I'm going to root for him. But inside I was like, fuck. Sorry. I was like, really? So he, because he was so young, he never pitched, but I knew he could pitch. He was a lefty, and we worked on curveballs together at that young age, which was probably a no-no, but we did it anyway. Championship game comes. They ran out of pitchers because of the pitchers' limitations that you probably see in Little League World Series. They had no more pitchers left. The coach who knew us from before said, David, you ready to go in? And David just shrugged his hand at his shoulders and said, sure. Don't think he really knew what he was getting himself into. It's just typical David. Okay? 12 and 13-year-old kids on the other team are laughing their ass off because this little 10-year-old is coming up to the mound. And the mound is small, and the distance, of course, is smaller. He starts warming up, and to them, it looks like 75 miles an hour. It's no lie. And I'm laughing my butt off because I know that he's been playing with the bigger kids all along, like me and my friends and everything. He's ready to go. Sure enough, he finished the game, pitched like 3 innings, struck out a few, and gave up a few runs, but was the winner of the game. Not a huge milestone in life, just something that I always registered with me about how good of an athlete he really was. If we weren't doing that, we were riding our bikes everywhere. We knew Willenboro at the back of our hand. Again, maybe my parents weren't so good, but they didn't care where we went. We rode our bikes to Willingboro Plaza. We'd stop off, see my mom at Pomeroy's who was working, go to Ricardo's for pizza. And then I'm looking at David Yasko, you know the third spot we go?
Well, probably Carvel's.
Reader's World. We go to Reader's World, and in the back room was the biggest comic book selection they had. And we would just sit there and read comics the whole time. And then we'd come back. My brother didn't have an easy life. There's no lie, there's no way around it, many of you know. I mean, he had Tourette syndrome. Even to this day, Tourette syndrome is generalized to blurting out profanity, obscene words or gestures. And to be honest, in fact, this is a real low percentage of the people diagnosed with Tourette syndrome. Just a stereotype, like stigmatism that goes along with it. He had the rolling of the eyes. He had the blurting of sounds. And back in the 70s, nobody knew what Tourette syndrome was. I could tell you many doctors misdiagnosed. And to the credit of my mother, she never gave up. We were in Philly, we were in Upper Valley Forge, we went to New York City, we were all over. Can you imagine being punished in elementary school because you can't stop twitching? Why can't you sit still? Being told to sit in the corner of the room or being sent to the principal's office? This is what David endured. And we were advocates for him, but you can't advocate for something that you don't understand. So it was very difficult until the diagnosis eventually came. The best decision my parents ever made was actually holding him back in first grade. During his first year, his Tourette syndrome was pretty bad. He did not fit in with the kids in the class and was teased very badly. It was to the point where he would eat lunch in the classroom by himself. He did not like the loud noises of the cafeteria. My parents asked if he could eat lunch with me at the second grade table. Of course I said yes, but honestly, who wants your little brother sitting them at lunch? But I think I paid myself as a really good brother. Then came the second year in first grade. And let me tell you, this was a life-changing event. Being held back was the best thing that could ever happen to David. This is where he met, this is where I'm going to get emotional. This is where he met Brian Holland, Adam Simon, David Yasko, Lisa Coates. He didn't find friends, he found family with them. Without hesitation, they accepted David and he fit right in. Everything changed. There were sleepovers, hangouts, weekends, silly good times. And I gotta tell you, this was not a normal friendship. We all knew each other, and that was what's great about it. I knew David's sister, Teresa. We all knew Brian's brother and sister. Her sister would drive us around in a cool brown Camaro back then. Things that I remember. And it made it a lot easier. And I will tell you that to this day, they still remain friends. If you look at the TV screen, there'll actually a picture of the four of them together from their high school reunion, where they're there. And I'm happy to say that all four of them are here today. So thank you guys for what you did. It was definitely appreciated. Not sure you knew at that age what you were doing, but thank you for accepting David for who he was. I think the word destiny may be what I would use here, but when he met his wife, Victoria, it never sounds right. It was at her graduation party, and a friend of her friends brought a friend with her. And that friend wound up being David's cousin, which was pretty cool. So it was a small world. And then I think David saw a picture of you. He said, hey, she's pretty cute, and called. And the rest was kind of history. I always said, maybe not enough, but Tori was the strength and rock David always needed. If not for Tori, I believe he would not have continued to do the things that he loved the most. She was supportive and did tough love when no one else would. I would be first to say that Tori was not dealt a favorable hand at times when it came to the disorders and medication. It was tough, but she handled them with the grace and smile every single day. I hope I don't steal this one. But one of the shining moments I know, that we all know, if you were here 21 years ago in this room for my father, was David couldn't finish his eulogy speech. And without hesitation, I don't know if you were standing next to him or if you walked up, but you took it from him and you read it and spoke like it was your own dad, with all the love and respect that all of us could ask for. And I think that was the moment that we knew, the type of person, of course, that you were. So just a couple of quick memories I just want to say. Growing up was awesome. My favorite first memory and the true love of my life and David's life was this thing called the Atari 2600. We were hooked. We played everything. Asteroids, Space Invaders, you name it. Even that terrible ET game. But there was one game we played that we couldn't get enough of, over and over and over. And I'll make this one a little bit participation. What video game had the very first Easter egg in it? Who said it? Who said Adventure? So again, profanity. No, that freaking dot. We spent hours looking for that dot. We didn't care about slaying the goddamn dragons. There was a dot. We knew about it. And back then, there's no internet. We got the Atari magazine that kind of teased the hell out of you once a month. We heard someone in Iowa found the dot. Money poured out of the sky. And we finally did find it. And we were like, what the hell? That's the kind of thing you flash in the sky. So, what's the movie where that's in there, by the way? You'll see that. You'll see what I'm talking about. It's in, yes, thank you. And I figured it out before anybody else. I said, I know they're talking about Adventure. Because I wasted precious years of my life trying to find it. And David too, by the way. We didn't give up. And we would take the Atari off the color TV and move it to black and white. And so we'd play all day. And that's not even counting on the hours we played stupid Pong back in the morning. What was wrong with this? All right, I'm going to wrap it up, guys, because I'm already having enough for me. But some of the other memories were really great. Just WMMR, listening to Dr. Demento late at night, recording all his crazy songs. How excited he was when he received his high school jacket. It was just amazing. He was so ecstatic. The big riff with him was, though, and he would never take it off. I told TJ this the other day, 90-degree weather. Nothing was on. And as good as he was in sports, and unfortunately because of his condition and what happened, he wound up getting his letter in the orchestra. He wouldn't tell that to anybody. The truth is, David had so much potential to even become greater than he was. In fact, he was one of the strongest individuals I met. He had to overcome Tourette syndrome, anxiety, depression, and then eventually, of course, cancer. At 14 years old, while playing Babe Ruth in school, one of the scouts actually told David he had potential to definitely be a lot better and work at his craft, because as a lefty pitcher, those things are still very rare. So I'm going to wrap it up with Tori, Nathan, and Nova. You can always count on me for anything. We're family. However, if I'm going to be honest, I'm not your guy for things like fixing the car, mowing the lawn, anything house related, automotive, like I said. If you buy something from IKEA, go call somebody else. Okay. That's David. But I'm going to be there for you. If you have a sporting event you want to attend, I'll be there. Any play, show, I will be there. Nathan, you want some beer from the liquor store? I'm right there for you. Having some girl issues, guys? Talk about protective sex, whatever you want. It's fine. You got it. And most of all, I'll give you all my love and support. I can't replace them, but I'll do my best to be there for you guys as much as I can. So there is a burial at Crescent at 2 p.m., but more importantly, there is at 3 p.m. we reserved a room at Penn's Queen Diner with a bar. I know it's Halloween, I know you guys are really busy, but if you want to come by at 3 p.m. and buy me a drink, I'd really appreciate it. And we can share some stories. What? Yes, I'm not driving home. Thank you, and thank you all.
Well, if I realized I was going first, I probably would have made this piece of paper a little longer. Yeah. My dad was a great guy, and if he was here right now, I think that there's one thing he would want to say to everyone in this room. Who the hell are you, and why are you here? I'm not very good with writing, so I'm just gonna read off my whole list of memories from my childhood that I had with him. As a kid, everyone looks up to their dad, and I'm sorry. It's not every day that you lose your dad when you're only 15. So, my dad and I always did cool stuff together. And remember when I was young, he bought me a remote control car so I could race against his. I still have it; it still works. Yeah. I loved spending all the time outside with him, playing catch, mowing the lawn. Of course, he would usually just sit while me and Nathan mowed the lawn. I remember, ever since I was a kid, I loved Legos, and I think I actually got into that because of a bunch of old Lego sets that my dad had from the 80s. Yeah, every Christmas and birthday and Hanukkah, I would always ask my grandmother and everyone else in the family for big Star Wars Lego sets and everything. But my dad would always say, "Stop buying the boy these damn Lego sets." He loved doing stuff like that with me. Yeah, the running joke in my family is he was kind of the most neutral person in the room, no matter what the topic was. Politics, who cares? But I think that he was opinionated with some stuff. He was very passionate about things, his art, and his family. He knew what to do in situations. He knew how to take care of people. Yeah. I think that's about all I wrote. Yeah, I regret writing this at 11 last night, but what are you gonna do? I love you, Dad.
I certainly didn't know David the longest here, as it's great to see so many family, friends, childhood friends especially. But as someone who spent the majority of the time with him over the last 27 years, I think I knew him pretty well. As you've heard from his brother and his youngest son, he was a quiet soul. Not only would he have been confused at why so many people were here at his funeral, but he would have been very uncomfortable with the attention on him. I remember at our wedding, we had a sweetheart table that was at the front, up on a little stage, just for the two of us. And he wasn't quite sure about that. He was a little nervous because he said all the attention would be on him. I remember thinking back saying, don't worry, they're not looking at you, they're looking at the bride. Since there are a lot of people here that didn't know him personally, just wanted to share, a few little remarks about him. Hopefully some good memories too for those who did know him. Although I'm a bit more personable in public than he is, we did share some very similar personality traits. David was very quiet and very private. Actually, he and I are both very private. I don't have a Facebook page. I don't do social media. I too am a little shy. It might surprise a lot of people I work with, but we had that in common. And sometimes that shyness can be misconstrued as aloof, maybe antisocial. Okay, David was antisocial. But he certainly, and even though he was antisocial, he absolutely enjoyed being with people and being with those who he loved, his family, his friends. He was definitely the social butterfly that would be in the back of the room, just kind of taking everything in. He reminded me of one of my uncles, Uncle Jimmy, who's here today, who's the same, growing up, was that man who was always at the social gatherings, but just kind of absorbing. And my mom used to say I would crawl up on Uncle Jimmy's lap when I was little, and all he did was have the smile, and he didn't say much, but that's what David was. The quiet personality trait, along with his recent medical diagnosis, did have him lose touch a bit with some of his friends, some family, even our own social church family with COVID. But I think because he was so private, he really didn't want to share too much. I think he was a little embarrassed and did not want the attention on him. As many of you know, and Michael had mentioned it, he was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin lymphoma, mantle cell lymphoma to be exact, in the spring of 2018. At that point, he didn't even want to share with his family and his mother. And we held it for a little while because both of us were a little uncomfortable with that. And again, didn't want the attention, didn't want the sorrow, so to speak. But that was, I guess about a year ago is when he started aggressive chemotherapy. And that's right around the time that his brother started up the updates, a Facebook page with updates. So I thank Michael for that. In order to share with some of the family and friends who weren't near in mild, but were definitely near in heart. And again, because I too am a little private, wasn't able to share a lot of that. One of the things I do want to thank is the Bishop Eustace community and head of school for the support, because it was hard for me to come in, and I guess it was in February, to kind of share that David had started the aggressive chemotherapy, and certainly both boys are now at Bishop Eustace, with Nathan being a senior and Noah a sophomore. And they too are taking it in their own ways. One's a little more outgoing and the other one's a little more like David. But through all of this, just know, David was actually one of the most loyal and thoughtful people that I've ever known. The loyalty struggled with because, and for young people out there, for us who have been in relationships before, sometimes it's easiest to be meanest to those who are closest to you. So for the young people, keep that in mind. Look how easy it is to be spiteful and spiteful to your parents, to your brother or sister, certainly to a spouse or a loved one. And I know at times was trying to be very strong for David, but Michael did point it out that there was tough love there. But now looking back, I think it was maybe something that David needed. At times I would get frustrated, I would be tired, but he was always there, and something that this week, I struggled with, and I think the boys and I will struggle with, that, times when I would, complain, I'd come home from work and it'd be late and the dishwasher's not unloaded, or his mother unloaded the dishwasher when it was dirty. So that happened multiple times, right? I'd say, really? So I'd have to pull everything back out of the drawers and the cabinets and rewash everything, sometimes more than that. But even through that and through my impatience with him, David was very special and very supportive and very loving towards myself and towards the boys. And at times, I just hope that he knows how much love and care was surrounding him, even though he was, a quiet man. So again, to the young people that are out there, certainly take the time, love those who love you most. I know sometimes it's easier not to, but even last night, a funny thing happened. I texted the boys from upstairs. I said, you guys got to come up to the bathroom. There was actually quite a large spider on the wall. And we laughed because if I had called David up, he would have tried to pick up a spider or capture it and release it outside. While I whack it with my shoe. So he was a very gentle soul, and he would not have done that. So even last night, we shared that funny story. And the funny thing is, Noah's absolutely spot on. If he was sitting here next to me, he would have, no doubt in my mind, would have leaned over to me and asked, who are all these people? Why are they here? He literally would have said, well, do I know them all? Some I may have had to remind him of who they were, yes. Others I would have said, no, they're here for Nathan, they're here for Noah, myself, your mother, your brother. They're here for those who are left behind. And we know why many of you here, David would have appreciated that and would have been surprised by the love and support. So he would have been very happy to see that. And certainly I'm up here now to say thank you. That is what has helped us get through. It's certainly very hard, but it's so nice to have that love and support around us and for David. So I know today it's really a day about you, and one of the things, again, he probably would have been very uncomfortable by that, but on behalf of Nathan, his mother Beverly, Michael, and their family, thank you all for being here today, and certainly hopefully many of you can join us at the cemetery or at lunch. Thank you.
Well, as most of you know my father, he was a very quiet man and probably knew maybe 1/4 of the people in this room. But my point with that is, I do not think that he knew how many people that he affected with his life and with his love. Me especially. There are many stories that I could say, that I could tell you about, but I'm gonna speak about his father, because his father died back in 1999, before most of our times in this room. He was very close to his father, and I was very close to mine. And even when picking out the casket that he was going to be buried in, or put in the mausoleum, we thought that was David. That spoke of my dad, because one, he loved Lancaster, and two, he was a handyman. This looks like something that he would have built with his own 2 hands. past 2 days it's been very difficult, especially with having to clean up the house of his stuff. And I looked in the garage and found his dad's old, like, tractor engine, whatever that was, the green and red thing?
Steam engine.
Steam engine. I was like, what the hell was that? But it's going to be really difficult for me, especially. I don't want to admit it, but I'm a very material person, and even a lot of the things that we put in this casket, I was very close to. And I really didn't want to put it in there, but I mean, he had to have his back scratcher, of course. But that type of stuff I wanted to hold on to. But going back to all of you here, especially from the Eustis community, and church, and from Boy Scouts even, there wasn't anything that he would not have done for all of you. And I'm glad to see that all of you are here today for him. And I guess for my closing regards, Dad, I'll miss you. I think my one regret with you is at Lake Garrison, Noah and I, we're the only cousins down there who did not catch a fish. That probably says something. But I hope to follow in your footsteps, Dad, and I love you and I miss you.
May the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be always acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. From Psalm 132. Lord, remember David and all the hardships he endured. How he swore an oath to the Lord and vowed a vow to the mighty one of Jacob. I will not come under the roof of my house nor climb up into my bed until I find a place for the Lord, a dwelling for the mighty one of Jacob. We all became different people in the presence of David Wishnick. In the economy of God, we slowed down. We spoke softly, and we walked humbly. In David's presence, we drank deeply from that particular well. He shared with us only the deepest and coolest water of the well. And in this day and age of communicating with each other at lightning speed, speaking softly and measurably, I believe is an attribute of God that is rapidly evaporating from our lives as the people of God. Like the mist or the dew of the early morning hours, we are told by the prophet Hosea. We say things that are not of the mind of God, and we live as if our words are temporary, fleeting, and without consequence, regardless of how they are communicated. The angels of God only speak what it is God tells them to speak. And at all other times, for all of eternity, they are peering into his face and singing his praises. They don't understand why it is we need to fill silence with anything else. What more is there to be said? David was a beloved son, a husband, a father, a most devoted son-in-law, and a dear friend who stood among us as the channel of God's grace. Nothing more, but certainly nothing less. That grace pouring into our lives was recognized, but only if we had the time to sit quietly and allow the silence to preside over the moment. Add to that presence a tool belt, a chop saw, a tape measure, and a pair of work gloves. And you were in the presence of God, leading his chosen people from deliverance toward promise. In the presence of David Wishnick, we had left Egypt under the cover of darkness. The angel of death had passed over our homes for having eaten the Passover meal as commanded. The Egyptian army had been drowned in the Red Sea, and we found ourselves on Exodus together. For David, water flowed from rocks and bread rained down from heaven. What more do you want? He seemed to say in his posture and in his silence and with flecks of sawdust in that beautiful, dark, curly hair. Now hand me that 4x6. For David, it was not that complicated. It was not that difficult to fathom the presence of God with us. Unless you want to return to Egypt. You see, the whole passage about walking humbly with your God is from the book of Micah. In the 6th chapter, God is put on trial. Imagine, God is put on trial. And he is defending himself in the face of being prosecuted by his own people. See, it's one thing to accuse God, and it's quite another to have to prosecute him. It is we who stand acquitted, and yet we prosecute God. Well, it is then that we hear a word from God to arise, present your case before the mountains, and let the hills hear your voice. My people, what have I done to you? Testify against me, how I weary you. Our beloved David lived the words he prayed. He behaved as it was he believed, and he had no need to prosecute God. We all grew in that grace just by being in his presence, by riding up front with him, by being listened to by him, by looking through the front windshield rather than the rearview mirror. Simply by his being the first in and the last out, our parish mission trips into greatly impoverished places bore a particular authenticity. An authenticity granted only to the people of God. While others, traveling for the first time, had to orient themselves to the surroundings of great impoverishment, David was right at home. In other words, there was nothing placed before us that the power of God could not command, lead, and redeem. For David, the Exodus continued. He was most comfortable following a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. David knew better and believed better than to prosecute God. In faith, he demonstrated what it is like to be silent before God because your mouth just happens to be full of heavenly food. his consecrated life put to close our passage from the prophet Micah. The final verdict in that courtroom being this: He has shown you, O man, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you but to act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. You see, the rules of the Exodus are simple. Allow room for the sojourner. Remain together. Worship only the God of all creation. Leave no one behind. Fear not. Collect only enough for today. And don't complain with your mouth full. Because this is the victory of our God. And because it is, we leave this place together, walking humbly with our God, with the faith and courage to meet the days ahead, with steadfastness and patience, not sorrowing as those without hope, but in thankful remembrance of God's goodness, and in joyful expectation of eternal life with those we love. Well done, my good and faithful servant. Well done.
I think all of us have a sense of privilege to have heard these amazing tributes to David today. First from his brother, who shared with us both the joys of childhood and the special challenges that David felt from the earliest part of his life, challenges that he had to overcome. And Beverly, I'm sure as you listened to Michael speaking and as you could reflect on all of the memories that Michael elicited, I think that you have a great sense of how David was influenced by you and your family, by Ronnie, of blessed memory, and how all of that came together in shaping his unique and special personality. And I can't think of any hardship greater than a parent who has lost a child in her lifetime. And our sorrow goes out to you as you experience this tremendous loss today. It is a tribute to David's character that he was able to overcome the initial kind of embarrassment of which Michael spoke, and yet achieve a kind of peace of soul, peace of presence, to be able to conduct himself quietly and softly and without having to stand out or prove himself to anyone else. And those qualities of kindness and gentleness, which is run through each of the talks that we have heard today, is really the ultimate achievement of David's life. And of course, to Tori, Nathan, and Noah, what an amazing husband and father you have had. And for two young men to have lost their father as teenagers is a tremendous loss. And yet to be able to come up and say how much he's given to you in your lifetime and be able to be grateful for it is a true gift. And Tori, from the time you first met David, you understood his quiet and gentle soul, and even all your life, through 21 years of marriage, 22 years of marriage, you were able to sit quietly with each other. You didn't have to say anything to each other. Just being in each other's presence was enough to make you feel the wholeness of your love and the wholeness of the life that you have been blessed with. Father Brian has spoken beautifully today about David's faithfulness, particularly how he achieved the lesson of the prophet Micah to do justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with one's God. Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel was one of the great rabbis of the 20th century. He marched with Martin Luther King in Selma and was an early opponent of the Vietnamese War and was a man of great conscience for all those who were downtrodden, and he was a voice for those in need. In one of his essays, Rabbi Heschel wrote, "If life is a pilgrimage, death is an arrival, a celebration. The last word should be neither craving nor bitterness, but peace and gratitude." David's life, David's pilgrimage through life, has been an amazing walk. When he was born, no one could have anticipated how it would play out. No one could have anticipated the many people whose lives he would touch and whose lives touched his, how his soul and spirit would evolve and develop, the family that he would create, the memories that he leaves behind in such a large community who have come out on a Sunday to be here, and the many who came before but couldn't stay for the service. Truly, he has lived a life that is noteworthy, lived a life that may surprise him in how noteworthy it is, but how special it is because of the quality of spirit, the quality of soulfulness, the quality of caring and love that he has given. And so the last words of David's life are indeed peace, gratitude, and fulfillment. And as each of you spoke about the love that he had and how much you love him, we know that that love will continue to bind you to each other and will continue to bind you to him forever. May his memory be a blessing. May the love of his life continue to overflow upon all who knew him, and through his beloved family, may his influence continue to make the world a better, softer, more loving place in the future. Tehi nishmato tzuror Rabbi tzuror hachayim. May his soul be bound up in the bond of eternal life, and let us say, Amen. Amen. Friends, if you are comfortable standing, I invite you to rise for the memorial prayer, the El Malay Bracha. El Malay Rachamim, Shochen Bameromim, Hametzei Menucha Nechona, Tachat Kanfei HaShechina, B'mahalot Kedoshim Tehorim, Kezohar Harakia, Mazirim, Et Nishmat David ben Rafael Ubela, Shehalach Leolamo, Began Eden Tehe Menuchato, Anna Ba'al HaRachamim, Hastireu B'Seter Kenafecha, Leolamim, Utzeror B'Tzeror Chayim, Et Nishmato, Adonai Hu Nachalato, V'yanuach B'Shalom, Al Mishkavo, V'nomar, Amen. O God, exalted and full of compassion, grant perfect peace in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure, to the soul of David Edward Wishnick, who has gone to his eternal home. Master of mercy, we beseech you, remember all the goodness, the love, and the spirit that he has brought to the land of the living. May his soul be bound up in the bond of life and love. The Lord is his portion. May he rest in peace. And let us say, Amen. Friends, please be seated. Following our service here in the chapel, the entombment is going to be at the Crescent Memorial Park.
up the pallbearers, please. I would ask you to rise once more, please.
Sedek lefanav yehalef, v'yasem lederef pe'amav, imalachav yitzav elav, lishmorcha b'chol derachecha.
Ladies and gentlemen, I would ask you to kindly remain seated. This room, please.
Yes.
Folks, just one quick announcement before everyone departs. The family asked me to let you know they will be going to the Pen Queen Diner after the burial takes place at the cemetery, and everyone is invited to attend if they. Thank you.